Morning, everybody. Natalie coming to you live. Spirit and coffee. Got my coffee here. Another new mug that I absolutely love. I'm going to bring out all the new mugs that I have, like 50,000. But you can feel the imprint of the hand of the potter that made this, which is freaking awesome, right? It's just kind of cool knowing that this started from the dirt. It's a true depiction of alchemy. When I talk about the mugs, and I've talked about it prior, is that when we mold something from the clay, right, we get the dirt and we put it into something, and now it's able to hold liquid. And so typically the liquid that's held here is coffee, but it can hold tea, water, anything, right? Ice, even. It can hold rocks. I mean, it's just a container that holds stuff. And then look at the beautiful art design on it, right? So they get creative with their way of constructing it. Someone might have put a different color on this, but it's really cool. You can feel the grooves of their hand, and that's kind of nice when you're holding on to it, knowing that somebody else placed their hands on here. Pretty cool. So there you go. True depiction of alchemy from top to bottom, clay to actual something manifested out of this, right? Out of that dirt. Pretty cool, right? All right, so let us get started. Right now, I'm taking a class called Transpersonal Psychology. Good morning, those on Facebook. I don't know who that is. Good morning to you. And transpersonal psychology, just really trying to understand what it means, and why this particular, I don't even want to call it a science because it's really not, this particular school of thought doesn't get as much attention or is seen as too woo-woo or not given the credit it deserves in the academic world. And I've always been kind of trying to figure that out. And mostly because my life is based on spirit, right? Spirit first, faith, God, and never have known nothing other than that. Now, I think that some people's idea or some people's scope of view or perception, excuse me, that they may not have faith or they may not believe in something greater than them, and that some people are atheists, and I'm guessing that, and I'm not 100% on atheism still, I don't understand, they say they don't believe, but the belief of not believing is believing. That maybe there's nothing greater, some grand creator, some grand design, or some kind of a greater something happening in the background for this to all manifest. So when we look at transpersonal psychology, and you hear in the academic world that it's, woo-woo, right? It doesn't have any merit or meaning. But I would say to you, especially those that are listeners, and ask the question, do you feel that there's something inside of you that's greater, that's calling you forth? Something that tells you that you are this grand creature that can create and mold and define your life in terms of beauty and uprise something that's creative and magnificent. Because I would say yes, that I see even in people the potentials that are there, this ability to derive at or come to a purpose, a meaningful experience for this world, a legacy to be left behind. We get to leave this legacy. We get to be the holder of our torch, right? And so when we talk about transpersonal psychology, I never really dug into it. I never really did research on the distinction between the different psychologies. And there was this great article that I read, and it's the Eye to Eye Science and Transpersonal Psychology, and it's the foundations and applications, right? And so this book is going beyond the ego. So it's past beyond the ego. The Transpersonal Vision is the book. And it's a book that we're reading for our class, which is a phenomenal book so far, because what it does is it tells you what transpersonal psychology is and what transpersonal psychology is not, and how it relates to the human knowing, or I should say the human experience, or the states of transcendence, and how we go above and beyond ordinary limitations. Okay, so looking at it, it's probably true that the single greatest issue today facing transpersonal psychology is its relations to empirical science. The burning issue is not the scope of transpersonal psychology, not its subject matter, not its methodology, not its premise, and not its conclusions, and not its sources, because according to modern thinking, all of those are purely secondary issues compared with whether or not transpersonal psychology itself is valid in the first place. That is, whether it is an empirical science. Where the argument goes, if transpersonal psychology is not an empirical science, then it has no valid epistemology, no valid means of acquiring knowledge. There is no use trying to figure out the range of scope of methods of knowledge and of the new higher field of transpersonal psychology until you can demonstrate that you have an actual knowledge of any sort to begin with. And so the way that so basically they're saying it's not a science, and it can't be pegged to a science because there's no scientific grounding for it. It's not empirical, you can't measure it, you can't see it. So with this particular author, and what he talks about is the three lenses, or the three eyes in which we view the world, or in which we experience the world as a human vessel. Now, science is good. I'm not saying it's bad. In fact, we've created so many cool things from science. I will say that science is a very patriarchal, very masculine way of viewing the world. And in some of the charts that I've created, I have sort of depicted why I believe we are viewing the world from a patriarchy. And it's because we're using our eyes and our senses rather than going internal. And it's hard to peg the internal. How do I measure your experience against something else? You can't. Everybody has their unique internal world where they're experiencing something, but maybe they have no words to describe it. So in other words, the other day, right, it was crazy. The other day, I had this thing happen. Okay. And it was the other day, it's been quite a while. And I was trying to explain it to my sister, but there were no words. Good morning, Joy. I had no words, right, to describe the experience that I was having. Because sometimes we experience things inside of us that we cannot describe or explain. Because there are no words for it. We have no words to explain the things that are going on internally at times. Though we try to put these labels to these experiences that we have. We're trying to give some communication or understanding so that people can relate to us, right? We are social creatures. We want people to relate to us. We want people to understand who we are as human beings. And we want that relatability because we're communal beings. We want to be part of a community. Well, what happens when we do that is that we try to describe something, but maybe the words themselves, right, or the depiction of it doesn't truly describe what is happening internal. And that is when we go above and beyond, right, ordinary limitations or states of being. We are trying to stretch ourselves into something different. But we have no words for it. So when we look at the sciences, right, it's the hard facts, right? It's the material. It's the thing that we can see, touch, feel. So he goes on to talk about the senses and the different eyes that we carry. And he calls them the three eyes of the soul. Okay. So Bonaventure, I guess that's how you say it, a favorite philosopher of the mystics, taught that men and women have at least three modes of attaining knowledge, three eyes. As he puts it, the eye of the flesh, by which we perceive the external world of space, time, and objects. So the eye of flesh would be our senses, right? Our eyes, the what we touch, what we feel, how we taste, to be able to describe that. And out of those senses arises a knowledge like, don't touch that, right? It's going to hurt you or burn you, or eat that. It's good for you, right? Or drink this, or breathe that. Good morning to those on Facebook. Say good morning because I don't know who's here. So we have the eye of flesh, which allows us to engage in and to touch and to experience the world through these tangible sensations that we have. Now, that's the first eye. And through that, we accumulate wisdom or knowledge or an understanding of the world around us. Okay. So then we have the eye of reason, by which we attain knowledge of philosophy, logic, and the mind itself. Okay. So the reason is looking at what is the purpose, what is the function, what does it mean? And we ask those bigger questions. We can say that science is in the eye of flesh and the eye of reason, right? How do we take what we understand and then put some meaning and behind it? Contemplation now is the next part. And this is the part where the transpersonal psychology exists. Now, I would say, and I can tell you right now, let me tell you what happened to me. I was accepted, I might have told this story before, but I was accepted into the PhD project. And the PhD project it's an organization that helps first generation minority students get their PhD. And it's for people or individuals who want to get their PhD in business. And I applied and I got accepted. And what they did is they flew me out to Chicago. Okay. And there were going to be recruiters for universities there. And so, they had recruiters, there were professors, they were going to have, it was this big event. And you went into this huge auditorium and everybody was just set up, right? Trying to pitch their school, trying to enroll students to think about getting their PhD there. So I knew myself what I wanted to get my PhD, right? I was like, I knew it would be organizational leadership, which allowed for psychology and some of the stuff that I teach to be ingrained into the studies that I wanted to do. And so I understood the sacred feminine and masculine at this time, and I wanted to construct, right, an organization that honored both the sacred feminine and the sacred masculine, and that operated in a space of holism, if you will, or integration. Okay, it could be holism integration. And so I went and I talked to a recruiter, professor. He was a professor. And I told him what I wanted to do. And I told him I wanted to do organizational leadership. And I wanted to look at the feminine models, not in increasing women in the workplace, not at all, but looking at the construct of the models that we use to actually create, right, the structures, organizational structures that we use to create organizations. So right now, if we looked at all organizations, they're on a hierarchy, which is a pyramid, upward facing pyramid, which is a masculine symbol, which is then the patriarchy. So anyway, we can go into that later. So I told this person what I wanted to do, and he started to yell at me. He literally got so pissed off and treated me like I was the scum of the earth and some like chewed up gum on the bottom of a table. I mean, he was pissed. And I just looked at him like, you're crazy. Like, you must have a miserable life. Like, you are really angry about this. And I, of course, rather than being upset that he was yelling at me, was curious why it triggered him so much. It's not like they were going to accept me into the program and I was going to go wreak havoc on everybody. Like, I was just there questioning their university, but this guy was pissed. And he yelled at me, told me that shit is woo-woo. And, he just went off. And I was like, wow, this person is angry about this. However, because I thought that was, just his experience, really what it was is the academics and the way that they view transpersonal psychology, or the way that they view what I call the esoteric spiritual alchemy arts, which is not truly honored, and it's done covertly. So if we look at all of the great like philosophers, right, and if we look at all of these individuals who chemists and scientists who have gone beyond ordinary limitations, right, they start to extrapolate something even bigger, something that goes beyond the limitations of our own understanding. And science doesn't like that, because it's not empirical. It cannot be proven true or false. I cannot sit here and tell you that your reality is false, but science would say it is if they can't actually put some kind of measurement instrument, if they can't see inside of you and tell you exactly what you're experiencing. So these woo-woo things that they talk about are you going beyond your ordinary limitations. Now, here's the deal. Science has become the way that we view the world, so much so that people are now feeling trapped and chained in a scientific method. We have become a scientific method. Go anywhere. And let's talk about, again, let me go back historically when we talk about these individuals who were using spiritual alchemy and the esoterics in their work. They all were. And guess what? It was all hidden. Why? Because when you go beyond your ordinary limitations, when you go into a transpersonal state of being or transcendence, science is afraid of that because it doesn't understand it. It can't rationalize it. Well, it's not rational. It's not meant to be. There are parts of us that are irrational. They don't have words. We don't have logos. We don't have a way to depict it. We are a vast creature experiencing this world, and yet they're trying to confine us to a box. Well, you're this way, and then you go to psychology. Well, you're this way because you had issues when you were a kid and your dad and blah, 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 blah. And they want to measure it. But there are things beyond that. So then the people will talk about the experiences they have, or talking to ghosts or seeing things that are there. And they're like, well, we can't measure it, so it's not true. But it's true for the individual experiencing it. And that experience is pushing that individual beyond their own limitations. In other words, it's actually helping them expand as a human being. There's no rationality. It's contemplation. It's going beyond. But people want to bring it down, especially in the academic world. They want to bring it down to, well, I can't measure it, so it must not be true. Bullshit. I'm just going to call bullshit on that, because there are things that you experience as a human being, you yourself, I'm talking to you guys, that you can't explain through science. There are no explanations. There are no even words that have been constructed to describe. Tell me you haven't experienced that. Every single person on the planet has. Why? Because we're interstellar. We're multidimensional. We're not just one thing. If we took our head off, right, our body would still not function, right? If we took our head out, it wouldn't. But we're a sum of our parts, but not really. There's something else inside of us that makes us think, makes us view the world, and it's beyond our senses even. So we start to transcend, but then when we're looking at the sciences, right, and how pissed off this guy was at me, it was kind of funny actually. He he was just not happy. He really yelled in my face in front of a bunch of people. I'm not even lying to you. The whole entire convention was filled with people, and he was just sitting there giving me this lecture with a high voice and yelling at me like I triggered something in him completely. It was crazy. So good morning, PBG. We have the ability to expand beyond ordinary limitations. And if you don't believe that, and some people don't, then you will be defined by what the academic world tells you are. You will not have a place to go beyond, because they are the creators of the new knowledge and wisdom, right? They create this information, they disseminate it, and people live by it. Like, I don't even know that people understand when we talk about the illusion and the veil. Well, whose veil and illusion are we living under? We're living under, good morning, Kumar. We're living under the veil of the academic world. Now let's look at the covert, right? Things that they had to do. When we go back into history and you look at all these great philosophers, or anybody who's ever left anything magnificent in this world, they were all alchemists. They were all alchemists. They all understood the arts. They all understood the great work. They understood transpersonal psychology. They were not able to talk about it, because if they talked about it, let's just say they would be dead. I mean, back in the day, you would die. And even today, if you get so big, let's just say, for instance, I was able to support the masses. Let's just say I had a following of trillions of people, okay? And I was to truly walk you through who you are, right? And really tapping into that. They wouldn't have people to do their work. And by they, I mean the individuals who are creating the illusion. They're the ones who are writing the script and the story. You can go beyond that script and story and create your own script and your story based on your internal truth. They don't want people to know that. If everybody knew that, well, we might not even have a society. We wouldn't have construction workers. We might, if they were truly excited about it, people would arise to be masons and maybe do it out of service, because that's what they truly desire, is building roads for people. It may be constructed differently, though. It may be using different materials. It wouldn't be pigeonholed into the capitalist mindset of it's got to be tar because my cousin has access to all of this, and the family line, I shouldn't even say cousin, the family line has this property that has all this, and we're going to generate money from this because we're going to keep the wealth and we're going to keep control. It's all interconnected. And boy, I wish more people would be on here listening. I'm not saying that you individuals aren't listening to things like this, but to have people really understand who they truly are, to understand that we are under the veil of a scientific method. We have become, right, the subjects of scientific study. That's literally what it's become. Why? Because if you go into the transpersonal side of it, they call those people crazy, lunatics, and you can't measure it. It's not scientific. But we have these three eyes. And I like what this writer says, and it's the eye of contemplation by which we rise to a knowledge of transcendent realities, meaning we go beyond ordinary limitations to experience something that is beyond our own understanding and our own reality. We can't measure that, because when you go beyond what we are here, we all might end up in a different space, a different knowing, something that has not been defined, something that has not been witnessed by others, something that you are witnessing all on your own. So how could I measure that? How can I measure your dreams? Let's talk about dreams. That's a good one. I can't measure your dreams. I can't go inside your dreams. I can't go inside your head in your dreams with you. That's your world that you constructed. In other words, we are interdimensional beings. We have other states of consciousness, right? Or parallel, or access to unconscious states. Maybe that's a better way to put it. access to these unconscious states, and those unconscious states, it's so vast that we may never touch. So transpersonal psychology and the study of this stuff is always going to be looked at by science as, oh yeah, you can't prove that, but it's your truth, it's your reality. And when you tap into that and you understand who you are, and you know they can't take power away from you, and you're not giving them the power. You're working with the divine. You're working with the source to what? To create and manifest in the external world. You become the extension. You allow the soul, you allow that thing that's inside of you to do the work, to move you forward, to go beyond the limitations of what are the confinements of who they say you are. You don't have to be defined by contemporary academics, scientific methodology. You are a science project. We all are. If we allow them to continue to see us as a science project. When we go beyond that, we got called crazy, right? So you have, when you look at Einstein, okay, let's look at all these great people. Go back in history. They were all alchemists. They all believed in the transpersonal. They all believed in going beyond limitations. They thought about the world in a way that was interdimensional. They didn't just think of it with the hard facts of science. In fact, Einstein would have to disconnect from his work, and his greatest work happened when he was in the state of meditation, if you want to call it that, not when he was sitting there chugging out the material mathematical equations. His greatest thing happened when he was in contemplation, viewing the world, having these experiences with the inner soul. Carl Jung tried to bring it out. Him and Freud got into a fight about it because Freud wanted to stay scientific, and he said you can't keep it scientific, and he was afraid to release all of his papers because then he wouldn't be seen seriously. Why? Why are they so threatened? Why is it such a big threat? So I used to say, when I was like, I'm going to get my degree, this is what I said. They're either going to kill me because I have people who follow me and they're starting to recognize and wake up to who they are. And they're not going to have a slave race anymore. And so then I get whacked. That's usually what happens, right? So if you look at all the great, even the chemists, right? Those people they came and got their papers and everything. They didn't want no one knowing what they knew. Or they're going to call me a whack job, and people will just think that I'm a weirdo. And either's fine, because I'm here to send a message. And look at 0 followers, people not listening, and that's fine, right? Not for them, perhaps, maybe not ready, or maybe listening to somebody else, which is good. We have a bunch of light workers out there doing the great work and talking about this stuff, and everybody has their own unique way of communicating about what this work means. I'm here to tell you that we get to reclaim our power. We get to reclaim our life. So I'm here telling you, reclaim your power, reclaim your life, remember who you are, and remember that sometimes your experiences don't need rationale. They don't need to be scientifically put into a box, because they're not even part of that. You can't measure some of the experiences you have. Maybe you don't need to be put in a box. Maybe you need to release the box and allow yourself to just be free floating outside the box, or whatever. Or maybe you turn it into a circle, whatever it is. You don't have to stay in the confines of a box. Okay, so I hope this helps. I believe I'm going to keep reading on this one because I like the eye of flesh in contemplation, um, and how these three eyes function and how they allow us to maneuver. So remember who you are. Open up your eyes, okay? Open up your eye. This eye they can't tell you, right? They don't know. They can't measure it. They can look at it scientifically, like what's happening, but they don't know what's going on internally. Can't see the images that you see in the third eye or in your dream state. Okay. So there you have it. I love you guys. Have the greatest day ever. Of course, I will be seeing you guys tomorrow as I'm back on. And to continue the great work. Hopefully, more individuals will benefit from this. I certainly hope so. Okay. So I love you guys. Have a great day, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye bye.